The Red River Farm Network is celebrating women in agriculture with this special series that we call Agricult-HER. Our title sponsor is the Minnesota Soybean Research and Promotion Council. And today our guest is Dana Allen-Tully of Eyota, Minnesota, dairy farmer, and also president of the Minnesota Corn Growers Association. And we'll talk a bit about that as we go on. First of all, Dana, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thanks, Don, for highlighting women in agriculture and extending the invitation. It's quite an honor.
I look forward to this conversation. Tell me a little bit about your family farm and growing up in agriculture.
So I'm the third generation on our farm. My grandparents bought it back in the early 50s, and so my dad and his brothers grew up there showing cattle and milking cows, and in the mid 70s my parents actually bought the farm from my grandparents, and at that time they had about 40 cows. And so as kids we grew up helping to do all things farm, whether it was calf chores or our summers were spent haying, and 4-H was a huge part of our childhood. So I kind of had my school friends, and then I had my 4-H friends, and 4-H really really provided a ton of leadership, confidence building, respect for agriculture over the years. And so I can't underscore the importance of that program was in my development over the years. We also had, like during the school year, we all had chores to do, and so my consistent chore was helping my dad milk on Saturday mornings when our herdsman had off, and that was a 4 a.m. call up the stairs to make sure that I was ready to go by 4:15 because that's when we started. So there's fond memories there, but at the time it was blood, sweat, and tears to participate. So
I can so relate to your story. I grew up on a dairy farm in western Wisconsin and very involved in 4-H, and that idea of having school friends and 4-H friends, it really hits home with me as well. So from high school, where did you go to school? What was the next step?
So I was pretty sure that I was not going to do anything in agriculture when I left for college, or during high school, the end of high school. And then it dawned on me that maybe I should do something with agriculture because I had so much experience. So I decided to go to the University of Minnesota for an ag business degree, and there was involved in college, the University of Minnesota Ag Ambassadors Program, CFANS leadership, Gopher Dairy Club, all those things. And then I had a mentor. I had a couple mentors actually, and they were in the banking industry because that would have been a really common career to come out of college with an ag business education. And I decided through those experiences that probably wasn't the place for me. So as I got to my senior year, I remember I was home for the weekend, and I asked my dad, I'm like, well, I think that I want to come back to the farm. And this was Sunday afternoon before I was getting ready to drive back, and without even taking a breath, barely waking up from his nap, he said, there's not room for you.
Oh.
Yeah, and so I said, okay, well, I think we'll go a different route, and I started to explore grad school. And at the time, we were one of the first herds in the state to have an independent nutritionist. We worked with nutrition professionals. Dr. Fred Ely was our nutritionist, and that really intrigued me. And so I started to explore graduate programs in ruminant nutrition. I talked with Dr. Jim Lynn. My dad talked with Dr. Jim Lynn because he thought, oh my gosh, all she's going to do is spend more money, and what does this mean? And so I ended up applying to University of Nebraska-Lincoln, and in a research program, an assistantship with Dr. Rick Grant, and he accepted me. So I was part of the ruminant nutrition group at University of Nebraska-Lincoln, and then later decided to come back and do my PhD with Dr. Jim Lynn. He was on the on the NRC committee, so the Nutrient Requirements of Dairy Cattle Committee. At the time, they were rewriting them from the for dairy cattle, and really thought that that would set me up to be, and someday maybe get the opportunity to take Jim's job when he decided to retire. So my end game ended up being that I wanted to be the extension educator at the state level for dairy nutrition.
So what happened coming out of school then?
So they, so I decided that I would try. Marcia Endrace, her position was up for, her position was being advertised for. And so I put my name in the hat, knowing full well that Marcia was extremely well qualified. She had experience, she knew what she was doing. And then I also put my name in the hat for a Federation of Animal Science Societies scholarship, fellowship out in Washington, D.C. And so the goal of that program was to integrate science into public policy. And it included, the Federation of Animal Science Societies supported this fellowship specifically, but it was all disciplines. From psychology to engineering to vet school to all of it. There were 100 scientists represented in the whole class. And it turns out that Marcia got the job, which is a perfect fit because she's done great things at the University of Minnesota, and I got the fellowship. And so I came out to Washington, D.C. for a year and had the tremendous opportunity to work for Congressman Gutnick, who was the first district congressman in Minnesota. And it happened that he was on the science committee, and he was also on the ag committee. And his position as for a legislative assistant handling agriculture policy was available. And so Congressman Gutnick brought me in. I had no idea what I was getting into, but it has been an amazing opportunity that has opened so many doors from this point forward in my career.
I think of Congressman Gutnick and his auctioneering skills. So he was always at the state fair and helping out with the livestock auction and those kind of things. That's a great memory. So from your time in D.C., give me the journey back to the farm. My fellowship was for 1 year, so it was for the year of 2002. And about 3/4 of the way through, half of the way through, I started talking to my dad about what I wanted to do after this. And while I loved my time in Washington, D.C., and I loved the opportunity it gave me to understand how policy is made, how the wheels of government turn, and how it's all interconnected, I really found that I wanted to run my own business. And so, at that time, it was the right time for everybody back at the farm. So that was my parents and my older brother. And it was the right time for me to come back, and they could see a pathway for me to be able to contribute to the bottom line of the farm, and that there would be enough revenue generated with the four of us actively participating that that's the pathway that we took. And the deal was we each got 2 years. So 2 years for any reason, either of us could walk away. So if it wasn't working for me, I could leave. And if it wasn't working for them, they could tell me that it wasn't working for them.
And that really took the pressure off of it being a huge move or a long-term permanent move until we both felt comfortable that it was going to be what we envisioned, working together. So that's kind of how I ended up back at the farm. And the position that they had open for me was I was going to work with calves because my mom was wanting to not do calf chores every day anymore and manage that program. And then I was also on the cropping side. So I have a PhD in nutrition, but I'm spraying fields, doing tillage, helping, harvest hay and all that stuff. And so it was a great experience, actually.
So tell me about the farm today and your role on the farm.
Sure. So today we have about 2,000 cows in the total herd. We did a major expansion in 2006 that allowed us to build a new parlor and add animal units and so on. We farm some extra ground that we're able. So most of the ground that we farm goes to feed the cows, of course, but we do have some extra acres that we're able to sell cash corn and soybeans and do some rotation there. We now my parents are retiring or are pretty much out of the business, and it's my older brother and I, and then we have two young men who are coming in to be the next generation or continue the farm after us. Neither Dean nor I have children that are interested in coming back to the farm. And so we really wanted to see, the goal was to continue whatever it is that we were working towards. So for the last 20 years, we've been working hard to improve the herd, make it a viable business, work with our community, and we just really didn't want to walk away and sell it. And so that was the reason why we started looking for some non-family members to maybe be able to continue on the farm. And so that's been really rewarding and exciting to see young people back. They've got the energy, I think farming is a young person's job, but you need the wisdom from the older ones who've put in the pain.
That's such a cool story, because we don't want to see that our connection to the farm go away, everything that you've worked on all those years, and good to see. What an opportunity for these two young gentlemen. Minnesota Corn Growers Association, how did you get involved even in joining the organization and on the board, and now to your role as president?
So we've been members. I think we've always been members, but I didn't really know a lot about it besides my experience with them in Washington, D.C. when I worked for Congressman Gutnick. And it was weird. One day out of the blue, Kirby Hetver called me, and he said, "Dana, have you ever thought of running on the corn board?" And I'm like, "Well, no, I've never thought of that." And he said, "Well, I think you should think about it." Okay. So I started to do some research, and, I remembered the organization is a fantastic organization. They do a really great job of working with their leaders and being effective in influencing policy and, being innovative in how to get solutions done for farms within the constraints that we have in our political environment or our governmental units. And so I said, what the heck, I'll give it a whirl, and it has been it's been an amazing experience. All of the board members, we all have our own story, but we all bring something unique to the table. And I don't know, it feels like an extended family at this point. So I'm really proud of the organization. I'm proud to be part of it, and proud to be president for this year. So they've been really good to me.
You do so much, obviously, in St. Paul and in D.C. How did that experience in the congressman's office prepare you for what you're doing today, Dana?
I think it really just, I kind of understand a little better how the pieces fit together, which is a perspective I think that, more of us should have, but not many of us do at this point. And it's so important for us to be there. We can look at the elections of 2022. We didn't expect those to turn out the way they did, but we've really taken a proactive approach and are working at building relationships with members who don't really have a connection to our way of life or how agriculture works today. I mean, even understanding the amount of technology that we have on our farms and the technology that's going to become available in the next 5 years is something that a lot of members wouldn't have any reason to connect with. And so I think that drawing that line, it's not really about us so much as it is about them and us telling our story so that they have the opportunity to ask questions and learn more. And then we just provide them with opportunities to learn what it is that we're doing.
You mentioned that story, your story, the members of the board that all have their own personal story. Does that help when you go into a lawmaker's office to be able to share that personal story rather than, maybe spouting off facts and figures, or what's your take on that?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, we've got guys on the board who understand crop insurance thoroughly, or have been doing sustainable soil health practices for years, or have drainage ditch, they have drainage issues, or we don't deal with that. I'm in southeast Minnesota. We have the karst. So right now we're dealing with water nitrates, which is kind of ironic that I'm president at this point, and that is our leading industry, or our leading issue, I mean. So it's just really being able to draw from that diverse group of people and allowing us to make that connection with the right people at the right time.
We do a lot of work in telling our story. Do you still see misconceptions out there, whether it's in the political world or just in the general public?
Yeah, I think we do, and I think that there's always going to be opportunity for us to engage more. We do at our farm, we provide the animals for the birthing center for the Olmsted County Fair, and we have since the beginning of it. So I just really, in the beginning, I was a little unsure about hauling up a cow who was going to have a calf in a spot where we didn't have any control over what was going to happen, how the calf was going to be taken care of, how the cow was going to handle that whole process. I've since calmed down, but because it's went really exceptionally well. But I just, people ask, why do you do that? And I'm like, well, I kind of think that that's what we need to do. We need to give people an opportunity to see how a calf's born, or how we take care of the newborn, or how we take care of the cow. And if we don't provide those opportunities, nobody's going to know. I just think agritourism is a real thing, and more people are interested in understanding where their food comes from.
You obviously have a passion for this business. What drives you in this business of farming?
I don't. I guess I've grown up in it. I believe in what we're doing. I believe that farmers really do have the best intention in mind. I believe we're innovative. We're generally problem-solving things that the general public doesn't know is an issue, and oftentimes we don't talk about them because we didn't know it was a big issue. We just knew that that's what we needed to do better, whether we were going to take care of the ground or we were going to take care of the animals. You just do the right thing. And I feel like that's the story that needs to be told, and the more people that get to interact with us, the more are willing to accept some of the practices that we do, even though on the front end they don't understand why we do them.
So throughout this month we've been focusing on women in agriculture. Advice for other women in this business?
I think that we need everybody. So whether it's a young woman or a young man who's interested in coming into the business, be relevant. You know, everybody wants to be around people who know and are successful. And if you focus on being successful in whatever it is that you're passionate about, you will draw people to you. So believe in yourself, believe in what it is that you're fighting for, working towards, and be inquisitive enough that you're not going to accept a no. Keep going, because you believe in what it is that you're fighting for.
Very good. Any final thought before we wrap up, Dana?
No, I just really want to thank you, Don, for doing this. And I mean, the other panelists or people that you've interviewed have been amazing stories. So I think it's a great highlight to the industry and in many different areas. So thank you.
Fun to share your story and others as well. Again, Dana Allen-Tully, farmer from Eyota, Minnesota, and also president of the Minnesota Corn Growers Association. Our special series called Agricult-HER, as we celebrate women in agriculture throughout this month of March.